It's recording.
Hello, my fellow Americans. This is Bill Lipinski, and next up is my good friend Ray Hanania.
And this is Ray Hanania, and this episode, season 3, episode 2, Bill and I are going to talk about a couple issues: the Hunter Biden controversy, how he showed up in Washington at these hearings that were intended. They subpoenaed him, and how he's facing their criticism of him, the withdrawal of Chris Christie from the presidential race, and the overall presidential election. In terms of Trump and Biden, the polling shows them actually pretty close. And also, of course, the role of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an independent candidate. I'll repeat that. The role of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an independent candidate. Bill, the 2 episodes, the last week and 2 weeks ago, where we talked about Robert F. Kennedy, we've hit like thousands of views on YouTube, and we want to thank everybody who's been listening. And clearly it had to do with the topic. The one consistency, common denominator, was that we talked about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a presidential candidate. I wonder how many other podcasters are going to figure that out.
I don't know, but it's just incredible what that name can draw to you. Just mentioning you're going to mention him, and you get all these viewers.
Absolutely. And I'll prominently play him, even if we only talk about him for a minute or so in this podcast, to get people to listen. But first of all, let's talk about Hunter Biden. I mean, Hunter Biden is a big controversy. And there have been so many questions about what he did that all stem from the computer that he took to get fixed. He left it at a computer store that happened to be owned by a Republican who, after a number of months, Hunter Biden's computer became the property of that computer store owner. And after going through it, looking through this computer, he realized that there was a lot of political information on it that some Republicans would be interested in. And he made copies of the hard drive available to Republican activists, I think, including President Trump and also Rudy Giuliani, the attorney. And some of the stuff, if you can believe it or not, I know the right media has been tried to be all over this, and the left media has completely ignored it, but they can't ignore it now, can they?
No, I don't think so. I'm surprised that fellow who ran the computer shop didn't call Hunter and tell him right away that, your computer is still here. You should come and pick it up before he sent it out to his Republican buddies.
Well, I read a lot about that because it was interesting. And what I understood was, Hunter was going through many personal issues. I mean, he had huge contracts with these foreign countries. But in a lot of the stories, they refer to him having problems with women and problems with using drugs and pills and things. So I don't know if he would have been exactly in a state of mind to remember that he even left it any place to get fixed.
That's probably what the problem was. He probably couldn't remember where he left it. He may not even
probably it.
He had it because of the alcohol problems he had and the drug problems he had. Well, there's a couple of committees of the House of Representatives, which is controlled by the Republicans, that want to have him testify before those committees, but they want to do it in private. And he is resisting doing it in private. He wants to do it in public, wide open. Let everybody hear the questions. Let everybody hear the answers. So he showed up the other day. It was pretty much a political stunt. He knew he was going to get to testify, but it was just to show the American people that the Republicans are refusing to allow him to testify in the open. The problem that I see, it's not a problem for the things that he's doing, but it's certainly a problem for the things related to his father.
Right.
He's out there, the more he's talking, the more he's coming up with these political stunts, the more people are focusing on Joe Biden And Joe Biden's, one of his themes was that, Trump's administration was so chaotic, you don't want to put it back in. But
Right.
Hunter, to me, is just spotlighting the fact that there's chaos, perhaps not in the Biden administration, but in the Biden family because of the fact of all of Hunter's problems. Now, if they get if they manage to get him, because the Republicans now are after him, they want to, he refused, they're saying he's refusing to testify. He's defying Congress. So they want to, I forget what the word is, but they want to convict him of something or other to make him subject to a year in jail and $100,000 fine. Now, I don't think it'll ever come to that, but if he does not wind up testifying, contempt of Congress, that's what it is.
Right.
You go to court, and if he is found guilty, that's another one of the problems that he has, because he's going on trial. I think it's next week in California on the problems that he has with the tax avoidance or the tax evasion, his failure to pay taxes on time. Another thing about Hunter, which I'm surprised at, is that he's become an artist. Now listen to this, he's an artist now. And so far he has given to this art gallery that he's working with about 15 or 16 paintings. 10 of them have been sold, okay. 3 of them were sold to very large Democratic donors. 70% of the money he's made off of these paintings has come from the 3 paintings purchased by the Democratic donor. Now, you know that some columnist is going to write that up and spread it all over, thereby, showing what a hustler this Hunter Biden is and casting aspersions on his father. So, I wish he would just shut up, get his trials postponed as much as possible so it doesn't interfere with the presidential election.
Yeah, I think that, they had a deal at one point where he was going to plead guilty to some minor charges, but then it took so long to kind of reach it that the Republican investigators believed that they found additional information that he was hiding involving, alleged money sharing and conferences that he had with clients that his father joined as a vice president, while he was doing these contracts, all this disclosures that we've talked about before about these email, pseudonyms that President Biden used in, speaking with his son. That doesn't seem normal. I have a son, and I guess if I wanted to hide something, I would use a pseudonym, but the idea would be that would just make me look more guilty, wouldn't it? That you can't hide something by doing that, because the way technology is, people and investigators can find out whose emails those are. So it's these pseudonym emails. Why would President Biden, as vice president and even as president, use these pseudonyms to communicate with his son if nothing was wrong? It just, where there's smoke, there's fire. So it's troubling.
Well, yes, it is troubling. I still don't think that the Republicans have connected Hunter Biden's dealings with his father at all. That's my opinion. There are other people who don't agree with that whatsoever. But no matter what the truth is, I think Hunter should shut up his mouth.
Right.
Shut his mouth is a better way of saying that. And try to get his trials postponed until after the presidential election, because there's nothing he's doing helps his father whatsoever. And I understand that the Biden people in the White House are very upset with Hunter and what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the cases where, whether he's guilty or not, it's going to be negative for President Biden.
Absolutely.
This completely focuses on something that's irrelevant to the message, as incoherent as it may be with the president sometimes, of what he's trying to do and has done as president. We could talk about this whole idea that inflation is down because I was listening to Kramer and CNBC yesterday, and they were saying that, inflation was up almost 20 to 25%. The prices were up, even if inflation went down. The prices didn't go down with the inflation, especially in the food market. But President Biden's
Let me just
response.
It is incredible, the cost of food today. I mean, I just went to the and I bought 7 or 8 items, cost me $85. I could not, I still can't believe how expensive food is. And that hurts the people that have the least amount of income, really.
And I think it's a mistake. No, I think it's a mistake on the president's part to continually tell people inflation is down, we're doing better than we did before. When I'm like you, I go to the store, I lay down cash to buy stuff, and I notice how little I can get and how much more I have to spend. I think I easily spend twice as much money just to get some basic things for the house, and my wife does the grocery shopping, and she constantly complains at how expensive things are. I think Biden is making a mistake not acknowledging that this is a difficult thing to address. We're trying to do our best with it. And instead of claiming that, oh, everything is much better, because if the people don't feel it being much better, then you look like a liar. And that plays back into his response regarding, his son Hunter, who is just an enormous controversy and ring around his neck. I think that's why they had his wife, Jill Biden, come out and claim, I think, for the cameras that what they're doing to Hunter Biden is cruel. She said, now, this isn't Hunter's mother. This is Biden's second wife, I think, because I believe Hunter's mother actually passed away tragically. And of course, those things happen in families all the time. But putting her up front, she's a better, she's a smarter person. If I were President Biden, I'd have my wife, Jill Biden, lead the campaign and do some of the press conferences, because she's very effective, far more effective than the president.
Maybe he should switch, step down and put her in as presidential candidate.
Well, I've been hearing these rumors more and more. I know we've mentioned it, that Biden is going to eventually step down and that they're going to put Michelle Obama up. Of course, the right is very cruel about her, but the left, I think, really loves her. And I think Michelle has a charisma, that I think would go over with the vast majority of people, including women, although I have some issues with her, minor stuff. But she would be a very strong candidate, and I think far better than Hillary Clinton ever could have been. And she could win that election if she's slated as the Democratic Party nominee.
I unfortunately agree with you. She's a little bit too far to the left for my taste. She's a progressive Democrat. But I agree with you. She has charisma. I didn't think she would run because when I knew her back in Illinois days, she hated politics. But I've heard her speak a few times recently, and she seems to be somewhat open, to getting involved. And she would be an excellent candidate. There's no question about it.
Yeah. I think she's phenomenal as a political person. I don't agree with everything she said. I think the one time I had a problem with her was when she said something about, I think her quote was, "You white folk don't understand the African-American people." And that term white folk really was offensive to me, even though maybe some people don't consider me white because I'm Arab. But I wrote a column saying that I felt that was the exact kind of subtle racism that the Obamas were, and their supporters were accusing many whites of doing, who I don't think were intentionally being racist, but used language that they took as being offensive. So why shouldn't I be offended, by the use of "you white folk"? I don't think that's the way that we should be talking. But outside of that, that's one of the few controversies, and she does have a great appeal.
I was very offended when she said that when her husband was elected president of the United States, he said, "For the first time, I'm proud of my country."
That's terrible. Listen, this week I wrote a column. My column, the title is I'm embarrassed as an American, to be an American, sometimes. And what I was writing about was how we do stupid things, how we contradict our principles, like to take out democratic leaders in other countries because they don't agree with us on principles. And we've done a lot. And how we will call one thing war crimes, but when it's an enemy, but when it's a friend of ours, we will be reticent against even using the word war crimes. So these instances I think are embarrassing and embarrass Americans. But that's another topic for
that's a topic for another show, because I'll be happy to totally disagree with you on that show, but go ahead.
Well, listen, I will say I served during the military. So if someone's going to criticize me, hey, let them step up to the plate and show me their honorable discharge in 14 years in the Illinois Air National Guard. But let me ask you a question. I mean, in reality, we hear people talking about, hey, Michelle Obama, maybe they'll swap her out. How difficult is that to be?
The only way you could do it is if Joe Biden decides he doesn't want to run. There's no
He
other
would
way.
have to.
Oh, he'd have to. There's no other way you're going to get rid of him.
Have you ever heard of a politician who was so old and having so many problems saying, I'm not going to run? I know Daley decided not to run for mayor, leaving us with that horrible Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who I did not like at all. But I was surprised that Mayor Daley didn't do what a lot of politicians do. They stay into office until it's over.
I was surprised that he decided to get out at the time. But he had a lot of problems on his plate, a lot of problems.
And even Rahm Emanuel decided not to run. I mean, his second election he didn't win the first, majority, and he was forced into a runoff with Chuy Garcia. But he decided not to run for a third term. And I don't know.
I don't think he would have been reelected because of the situation with the shooting by the police department of the
Laquan McDonald shooting. Mm-hmm. Right. And the way he allegedly, withheld the release of that video for political purposes, it was said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but in this case, Biden has so many problems. I mean, maybe he doesn't recognize them. He's just not, the clarity isn't there. And I'm not making fun of people who are older, because Bill, you're his age, aren't you?
I'm older.
And you're older than him, but there's a clarity with you. It's not about the age. It's about, can you control yourself in your discussion? And, how many mistakes I'm sure as we get older, we need to be reminded about certain things. It takes us a little longer to remember a few things. But that's not the problems that people are seeing in President Biden. And the fear is that he may, and again, God bless him. I don't want to see anything bad happen to anybody. But if there's a circumstance that he wins election and something were to happen to him, Kamala Harris would become the president. That would be the worst thing for this country. And that's more frightening than reelecting Biden. They should do us a favor, step down, put a stronger candidate up, and maybe somebody who's a centrist rather than a far left or far right extremist.
I wish you'd take some hard stands in this program, right?
Well, I'm trying to be diplomatic. I mean, these are the realities. I think people are stands. I think these are the things that people are talking about. Absolutely. And I think it's important. And you and I, we don't shy away from that stuff. Now, the other big story, I guess, and maybe it wasn't unexpected, but Chris Christie, I think what was his governor of New Jersey, correct? Or is the governor? Mm-hmm. And he has decided to withdraw from the race. Why was that, do you think? It was just nobody connected with him?
All I want to say for the record, that my two candidates for president, Senator Scott and Governor Christie, are now both out of the race. So I have no particular candidate that I'm interested in. Christie got out because he simply wasn't going anyplace. He couldn't really generate, much support. I mean, he has almost no support in Iowa, and he got up to maybe 15% support in New Hampshire, but he was behind Trump, and he was behind Nikki Haley. So I think he made the right decision. I'm somewhat disappointed that he did not endorse someone. But he said, he wasn't going to endorse anybody because as far as he's concerned, the only important thing was to get rid of Trump. Well, I would think that him endorsing one of the Republican candidates might help that happen. But he's not endorsing anybody. So we're down to your friend, what's his name, Ramaswamy, and
Vivek Ramaswamy. Absolutely, you're right. Sorry about that.
And Nikki Haley and DeSantis. I can't believe DeSantis is still around. To me, it's incredible with a guy that has really gone almost no place other than down since he announced his candidacy.
And I was reading online, a lot of the people who are closer to the presidential election are saying that both DeSantis and Haley, if they're going to win, they, to defeat Trump, they need to have some big wins, not just in Iowa and New Hampshire, but in a bunch of states. But the polling still shows them trailing, even though they're creeping up closer, to Trump as they get closer to the elections. But Haley isn't one day she's looking like she could be a strong candidate, and another week it looks like her popularity is waning. So I'm not sure how voters are actually looking at them in a substantive way if they're strong enough to unseat Trump. I think the only thing hurting Trump is the real rival candidate, and that's the U.S. attorney. That if they convict him before the November elections, I think it's over, and then there would be a big void, which would be interesting to see how that would be filled.
I think the biggest problem that Trump has is Trump.
Yes.
As far as his big mouth and not being able to shut up, not being able to he goes after anybody that says anything negative about him. He goes after them.
He can't stop himself, and it's a terrible.
Now, there's
but that's part of our
population that likes that, but it's a relatively small percentage of the population.
Well, I was going to say that's part of the today's TV culture, where that plays great on TV, but it doesn't play great. This confrontation with people on television, all these shows that are built on putting two people to confront each other. It doesn't transfer very well into politics in a positive way, and I agree with you.
Those shows are disgusting to me.
They are, but a lot of people love them because the ratings are so high. Maybe it's like watching an accident. How we drive past an accident and we all pay attention to it.
Absolutely.
You see a little old lady being walked across the street by a Boy Scout, nobody cares. Nobody notices it. And then, listen, any final thoughts on the presidential election?
I think that you are correct. Nikki Haley or DeSantis, they're not going to win Iowa. Trump is going to win Iowa. I think that Haley's got a shot in New Hampshire. And then they go to South Carolina. Well, she's the former governor of South Carolina. So she wins South Carolina. And if she does, she's got a possibility of getting rid of Trump. I'd still put my money on Trump, unfortunately. But I don't think DeSantis can do it at all. I think he's been to the post for too long. I don't think people want him. As I think his polling results go down, down, down. Nikki Haley is going up, but she's going up very, very slowly. So we'll see.
And I think it's tough for a woman to run for president, even in today's day and age. I think she would be weaker than Hillary Clinton was. And I thought Hillary Clinton wasn't that great. But I don't think either of them come up to the quality that Michelle Obama could bring to the election if she were running as a woman candidate. I think and being African American, I think she would do really well. So let's say that Haley were to take the Republican nomination away from Trump. I think she'd be a weak candidate in this country, and it might help Biden win. Or a lot of candidates could go to our third party candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who a lot of listeners and viewers really like, apparently, because their numbers, when we talk about them, really rise up significantly.
Well, I think that these people who really like Robert F. Kennedy, such as you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Should volunteer your services to get them on the ballot in a few of these states so far, the only state he's on the ballot in is Utah. And I understand getting resistance from some states. Other states are saying, well, get yourself a vice presidential candidate. He's got so much work to do. I think he's quite popular with the young people. I think he has a lot to say. I would like to see him be involved in the process because I think it would be good for this country. I don't know if he'd be any good as president or not, but I think his involvement, the knowledge that he has, getting that out in the presidential election would be very valuable. But he's got to start getting on the ballot. I mean, he's almost as bad as my friends No Labels. I mean, at least he's on in Utah. They're not on any place as of yet.
Right. And I'll tell you what, he can't be any worse than the current president or the prior president. So I would rather gamble. The reason why I like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is because I'm one of these believers where I'm willing to gamble that somebody new will do better than what we've had. And it may turn out he might not be a great president, if he were to win by some means. But, we were just looking at this map where half the states, the window's open, but he doesn't have any electors, that are willing to be put up in the election to represent him. That I probably half of probably about 25 or 26 states. And then there are a couple states, he's like, I think it's 3, 6, 7 more states where he's in the process of getting on the ballot. But, we're talking about 52 states, and there maybe 10 or 12, including Illinois, where the window's not yet open to get him in. And he needs to do some real organizing. He needs to get some money, and he needs to put himself on the ballot because there are a lot of people that like him. And I think the only thing holding back is the two things. One, does he have the money in the organization? They may not believe he does. And the second thing is we've been raised in a two-party system. The idea of a third-party candidate has always been such a long shot that even if you like the person, it's hard to believe that the third-party candidate can win. So that must temper a lot of the support that he really needs, to kind of revive them. And I think those are the things he needs to address more than any of these other issues that he's talking about.
I agree with you on that. Would you be willing to be an elector for him out of the state?
I would. I definitely would. But, the one time I did run for office, after I left the Sun-Times, I did a Milt Rayco. I ran for office because I wanted to see what it was like. And I have to say it was the most miserable experience of my life, running for state representative against a guy out in the 38th district at the time named Larry Wendland, who was a House floor leader for, I think it was then Governor Jim Edgar.
Oh, okay.
And I came close. I had the backing of Mike Madigan and the Democratic organization. But it was a ugly race. The things they said about me and the things that I got published in national magazines about him in response. But it's just horrible to run for office. And I'm sure I don't know, you have to have a pretty thick skin, I guess, to survive that.
Absolutely.
All right. Any final thoughts? Anything else at all? Or
no, one of these days we should talk about President Eisenhower, since you're reading this book at the present time about him. And I don't think he is given enough credit for all the good things that he did when he was president for this country.
Yeah, Eisenhower was a good centrist. And I think that there's a big story to tell that, he was well liked. And I actually met him when I was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. We ran into him on Michigan Avenue, my mom, my dad, my sister, and I. And my dad, as you know, served in the OSS, which later became the CIA, and went up to him and said, I worked in the OSS, and he was president at the time. He stopped, he lifted me up from my mom, held me. My dad and him talked about where he served in Naples and Italy and throughout Europe and the Middle East with the OSS. Yeah, it was very interesting, but there were no selfies and no cell phones to take pictures back then.
That's too bad. Well, yeah, and then this is just a story. You have no proof to back it up.
Nothing. Right? Nobody survived other than me. And I'm sorry. There's nobody to remember that. No, but it was just one of those memories that you remember from him. And it was like one guard that he had with him going to his limousine, coming out of a building on Michigan Avenue. That's all I remember. And him lifting me up, no photograph, no picture. You know, they didn't carry around cameras back in the 50s. You know, they didn't carry around cameras. So what are you going to do? Anyway, Bill, thank you.
Very good, Ray. Until next time, this is Bill Lipinski, a fellow American.
And I'm Ray Hanania, and I hope you will follow us at twoguysonpolitics.com, which is on our YouTube channel, and our audio podcast on Spotify and all the popular audio podcasts. And of course, we thank all those people, thousands of them, who have been watching the YouTube channel. We do appreciate it. And we've gotten a lot of comments, but I'd ask them, give us some suggestions on things that you'd like us to talk about. We will definitely do that in any of the upcoming shows. So thank you very much, and we will talk to everybody again later. Bye-bye, everybody.
Take care, Ray.